Tonight, the president's former top Russia advisor delivering critical testimony on Capitol Hill. A person familiar with the matter telling NBC News Fiona Hill planned to tell lawmakers that the president's outside lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, sidestepped official channels to run a shadow foreign policy in Ukraine. Giuliani denied that allegation to NBC News today. Chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, pressed.
How's the deposition going? Good.
And another appearance is also stoking fear among people close to the president. The ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, is set to testify Thursday. A source familiar with his testimony tells NBC News Sondland plans to tell Congress that when he told the top diplomat in Ukraine there was no quid pro quo, he was relying solely on what President Trump told him, not on any firsthand knowledge of why U.S. military assistance to Ukraine was held up or who ordered it. The president has denied dangling military aid in exchange for investigating the Bidens. It all comes as President Trump is keeping up sustained attacks against Joe Biden and his son Hunter.
By the way, where's Hunter?
The president has accused the younger Biden, who had business dealings in Ukraine and China, of profiting off of his father when Biden was vice president. There has never been evidence of that. Still, Hunter announcing over the weekend through his attorney he will step down from the board of a Chinese investment company by the end of the month. For his part, former Vice President Biden pledged no family members would have West Wing offices in any future administration of his, nor would they have conflicting business interests with any foreign entities.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.